Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the Expanse Season 6, Episode 2, Azure Dragon. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of the Expanse, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for the Expanse up to Season 6, Episode 2. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, this was a really good episode. I love the Expanse, and it seems like this season is in fact building and building, which is great. I'm good that they don't seem to be rushing through the story. It seems to be going at a really good pace. We'll see how it lands for the final 4 episodes, but so far, yeah, it's building the way a season should. So yeah, it's getting really exciting. And damn, I just love this show. So anyway, let's start with the opening scene again, which is, I don't know if I have much to say. Well, I have a lot to say, but it involves spoiling it, which I'm not going to do. So taking that into account, I don't know if I have much to say. So we're on Laconia again, and we visit the young girl named Kara. Now, I suppose people who didn't look online or didn't talk to anyone who's read the book might not be aware that this is going to be an ongoing story this season, and maybe they thought that that one scene we got in the first episode was just a simple scene of some girl playing on an alien planet just to show that there's an alien planet. But this is actually going to be an ongoing storyline, which we see here, where in the previous episode, the girl had poisoned the bird by giving them this alien bird earth food, which was incompatible of eating, and so she ran it home, and she was very upset, and her mother tried to explain it to her, and she was like super upset, and saying, has she realized that she's the one who poisoned it and it was her fault. That makes her feel even worse. And the mother tries to console her, but it doesn't quite work. Now, we do get, if you listen carefully to the chatter that the parents are saying in the background while the camera is focused on the kids, is that they're talking about the soldiers who came, so which is referring to the Laconians, or the Martian splinter group who will settle Laconia because that's where they had these alien shipyards that they want to use. And so the parents do make reference to the stuff that they're doing in orbit, which is building these ships using protomolecule technology. And so it makes it clear that these settlers were here first. So there was a small group of settlers who initially colonized the planet, but the Martian splinter group, who will call themselves the Laconians, came and took it over. And so they're a much, much superior force, but they're trying to sort of be benevolent. They're not trying to completely, conquer them, but they're making sure they know that they're in charge of the planet now. And so the parents have to go to a meeting to sort of smooth things out and sort things out. And they're just scientists, so they don't really care about any of the political motivations. They just want to keep up their science. But Kara's mother mentions how she's upset that the Laconians, or the soldiers as they call them, are not sharing any information on what's going on in the Sol system, and she refers to it at home, and this upsets Kara, who says this is our home now, because it makes it clear that Kara was actually, and her younger brother were born, or at least not born, I think in the novels at least she was a baby when they brought her through the ring gate, but she was raised on Laconia, like it's the only planet, the only place she's ever known. So to hear her parents refer to some strange place that she's never been to, Earth, as their home upsets her, because she's like, no, this is our home. Which is an interesting character beat from her, and interesting from her perspective. So anyway, her parents go to the meeting. and they tell her to stay at home, but she defies them, and she takes this drone out to try to save the baby birds because they no longer have their mother to look after them. So she wants to use the drone to take them up to their nest, and the drone just malfunctions and dies. And so she starts freaking out because she's sad because, for one thing, she broke her parents' drone, which she wasn't even supposed to use. Like, I like in the show, they have a little thing written on the drawer making it very clear, like, this is not toys, Kara, do not touch. And yet she does it anyway. And now she broke it, so she's in trouble with her parents. But more than that, the two of the baby birds are still stranded with no way to get back to the nest, and so she starts crying and freaking out, and then she decides to bury the mother bird that she killed, but she's not paying any attention, and her back is turned, and that strange dog comes up and snatches the dead bird away, which she's very upset about. And that was a really cool, I love the way that they filmed it. It did have kind of an ominous note because I suppose someone unfamiliar with it may think that that strange dog was going to attack her, because it was just slowly sneaking up on her when her back was turned when she was burying the bird, but it turns out it just wanted the dead bird. Now I will say that I mentioned before last week that I started to read this short story years ago when it first came out. It was 3 years ago or something. And I never finished it because I thought it was boring. And this is the part where I stopped. And a couple days ago I went back and reread it, and I was actually found it extremely powerful. One of the most powerful short stories I've ever read. And so I kind of regret giving up on it. And so I have a feeling that some people who are watching the show right now might be feeling the same way I was feeling. Although, to be fair, when I was the short story, this so far in the show there's only been maybe 6-7 minutes of story, whereas the short story, this was a lot of pages. They took a lot longer to get up to this point, which I was like, all right, some girl who's worried about birds dying, why is this interesting? But I do have a feeling that some people watching the show may feel the same way. But just let me assure you, without getting into spoilers, it does. This is the worst place for me to stop, because right after this is where it starts to get really interesting. But again, I can't get into that because I don't want to spoil anything. But I will say that I think one of the things the show underemphasized is the drone and how expensive it is and how much she's in trouble for breaking it. And also in the short story, there was multiple dogs, not just the one. But of course, this probably has to do with CGI budget or whatnot. I was really hoping to see more than one dog. Plus, in the book, they were known to make a sound going "coo-coo," and I'm a bit disappointed they didn't do that either. But but whatever, maybe they'll do it later. But I'm loving these scenes. I'm finding it beautiful. But then again, I know where they're going with this. Maybe some people who don't know where they're going this just find this kind of unnecessary and boring, but we'll see how you feel once they get to the rest of the story. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the episode. So let's start with Avasarala, because she wasn't really up to much this episode. They just showed her and her crew on the ship being all tense about the attack that's going on. But the main thing with her is that she commissions Monica Stewart to do a piece on the suffering that Earth is going through, has to try to elicit some sympathy in the belt. Monica doesn't believe it will work at first, but and at first Monica's like, I'm not a propagandist, I'm not going to do your propaganda, and she's like, I don't want you to lie for me, I just want you to tell the truth. Just present it as as you want. And I think she recognizes how good of a journalist Monica is and how good she is at dramatic flair. And she was, after all, did help solve the situation in the ring gate. So, and of course, before that, Monica was annoying her, trying to get information she didn't want her to have. So she wanted to put her to good use. And she convinces Monica by saying that how will she feel if she in the future, if more people die from these belter attacks, that would she feel like she could have stopped even some small percentage of it by doing her story. And I like how she is like, oh, you're really good at laying on the guilt trip. And I was like, yeah, I got a lot of practice when I'm alone. It's equal parts powerful and funny. Like, I do really, it shows the how she's been torturing herself over what's been going on with Earth and the disaster it's been in. Now, as far as doing this sort of piece to really put a human face to the suffering, which I do think is important, because it is very easy to just label people the enemy and be completely insensitive to the atrocities and suffering that you're causing them. But on the other hand, something that's been pointed out in this episode and the previous episode, the Belters have suffered through similar tragedies, and the Earth has turned a blind eye to them. So, on the other hand, I do feel like a lot of Belter's reaction would be, well, this is what we've been suffering already, and you didn't give a crap about us, so why should we give a crap about you? Which is their attitude at the moment, but I suppose once they see it, it's not just an abstract idea of suffering. They physically see the face and the specific suffering from people that meant them no harm whatsoever. It might get them to see that two wrongs don't make a right, and that there could be a better way out of this situation. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of fruit this bears. So now let me move over to Drummer. This is really interesting. And I think the Drummer storyline is probably the one I'm most interested in, because it's the biggest departure from the books, where the other ones follow the books pretty closely. So this is the one where I'm less sure of how it's going to play out. So it makes it a bit more interesting to me. So she meets up with this other ship where she was going to unload Michio. And at first they're very weird. First of all, let me say I love these scenes. The chemistry between this character, I believe his name is Walker, and Drummer, and because at first there's an element of tension where they think that he might try to turn her in for the reward. And I like how when he just casually says, "Oh, there's a problem," and Joseph goes to put his hand on his gun immediately, and he sees this, and he just instead of freaking out or getting scared or upset, he just casually deflates it with a joke, which I love. I love this guy already. It makes it clear that he's not a threat, but he doesn't overreact to them. I think he understands why they would be jumpy. And so at first he's like, "Oh, can I tour the ship?" And Drummer's really tense and "No, I don't think so. Let's just get this transaction and move on." And when it sounds like he's in just as much trouble as Drummer is, Michio is like, "Well, I'd rather just stay here if you're going to be on the run. If I'm going to be on the run for Marco either way." But then he makes it clear, he's like, no, we're not on the run for Marco. We're just doing petty tasks for him. He's just demeaning us. He's not actually chasing us. But that's when it becomes clear to Drummer that Walker doesn't really have any love for Marco. And he makes that very clear in his attitude towards them. And so she sees an opportunity. And especially since he was a member of Golden Bough, which some of them stayed with Marco, but a lot defected. I think this was mentioned in the previous season where they found destroyed ships, people who had been killed. I think that was Golden Bough that splintered from Marco. But there were some ships, some members that did survive. And so she talks to this guy about maybe getting in contact with some of these people who hate Marco and forming a group to attack his supplies. And I love how this guy, he was being all friendly and talking about Ashford, how he's a true pirate. And then when Drummer starts to make this proposal, he's like, then he starts to act a bit scared of Marco. And he's like, well, maybe I'll just turn you in for this reward. But he was never really going to do that. He was just getting a bit irritated with Drummer treading on this ground and trying to sort of warn her off. But it was very convincing, and she convinces him, of course, referencing Ashford again, saying that, well, we could be like just the old days, like the pirates. and so this is setting up for something really interesting. So the supplies were mentioned in the other storyline with Marco as being is very important. He's trying to get these supplies out to Medina Station, mostly military supplies. I'm not sure if it also includes, they're like supply depots or whatever. It may also include, like, I don't know if this includes food and water and air and stuff that, because in the novels, they were basically stealing from all the colony ships that were meant to go through the Ring Gate to colonize other worlds. They'd be packed full of all these resources, because as made clear in that Laconia storyline, is that most of all the food and stuff is alien, that humans can't eat it, and they need to bring their own agriculture and food and means to grow more food over there. And so all these colony ships are completely like stuffed and packed full of supplies. Now in the novels, once Marco took over Medina Station and was running the outer system, he was confiscating all of those supplies from all those colony ships, not allowing any colony ships to go through the gate. He would stop them and steal all of their supplies. And so I'm wondering if that's also included in these supply depots, is all the goods that he had stolen from all these colony ships. And now Drummer is talking about stealing them back for herself. Now, she would probably use them to actually do what Marco is claiming to do, but not doing, is to actually feed the people of the belt, or to help the people of the belt. And Marco is, of course, just reserving it for all his military installations. Now, I'm just extrapolating here, because I don't think they made it very clear in the book. They didn't make, in the show, and they did make it clear that there were military supplies he was trying to get to Medina Station. But there could be other supplies as well. But the point is, if Drummer does pull this off and attack his supplies, that's a great way of hurting him. That is a great way of hurting his power. And it would be, being like, just acting like pirates, it would be a great way to sort of really weaken his position. So it's a really exciting prospect. So yeah, and I love the scenes with this dude. So the chemistry he had with Drummer is just so good. So I can't wait to see where they go with this. And also, they weren't very clear of what Michio's going to do. Maybe this means she's going to stay with Drummer, since these guys are going to be working with her anyway to attack these supplies. So maybe she's going to stay after all, which would be all okay with me. Anyway, over to Ceres Station with Marco and Philip. We see Philip has been arrested, of course, for murdering his best friend. But Marco comes to bail him out. The runner of Ceres Station tells Marco that Philip, there needs to be consequences for his crimes. But Marco's like, no, this is a free Navy matter. I'll take care of this. So they turn him over to Marco, and the first thing Marco does is give him his gun back and say, resume your duties. So basically, he's just getting a get out of jail free card. He's just going to wipe it all under the rug, and Marco's going to save him. And then Marco says, oh, we'll just say that he attacked a superior officer and you defended yourself, and that doesn't matter. So he's basically covering his ass. However, Marco does point out how privileged Philip is, and saying that, telling the story when he was younger, that he used to go out and party and drink and sleep with women, but he knew that he couldn't fuck up. He knew that things had to go back to normal. He had to be on duty the next day because no one was there to bail him out, making it clear that he's doing this for Philip, and so Philip has this privilege. And so he also talks about how Philip has become an embarrassment. But what, of course, he's not mentioning is all the murder that he's making Philip do, and he's not acknowledging the effect that this is having on him. But, of course, he wouldn't, because he's Marco. And, of course, Rosenfeld, Marco's second, warns him about Philip, and I love how she's like very brazen. He's like, I would be very careful what you say about Philip, and she's not. She doesn't give a shit. And I thought it was really funny where she was like, Marco was like, most people are afraid of me and you're not, and she's like, you're welcome. Which I don't think is what he was getting at, but he he smiled at that, so I think he did appreciate that. Yeah, but she really doesn't give a shit. And she will just say whatever she wants. But then we see that Philip, of course, is very guilty about having killed his best friend, as he should, and he wants to help out the families or whatever. And Marco and Rosenfeld really see him as a disgrace. And Rosenfeld suggests that she just cut him loose, but Marco says he loves his son. I mean, in his way, I think he does, but really it's all about ego for Marco. Like, Marco just wants a successor. And having a successor is not really caring about your son. It's just wanting your legacy to continue. So it's all about ego to him. So he wants Philip to straighten up, become a better belter fighter, so he can take over for him once he's dead. But, yeah, I don't know if I would say, because it's funny, Rosenfeld talked about how there's different kinds of love, and that's definitely the egotistical centric kind of love that Marco has for Philip. Anyway, so all that stuff I did find interesting. And then, so now let me get to the Rocinante. So Bobby comes on board, and I love this. I love how they say it's like, oh, there's a mission specialist, and Holden's like, what the fuck? I don't know any mission specialist. And I could just picture in his mind that he's like, there would be some hard ass who's gonna come in and tell him what's what. But he goes to the airlock and sees that it's Bobby, and he's like, oh, Bobby! Like, he knows her. They worked together before, so he's like really happy to have her on, even though she does kind of take charge later. But there's still that prior working relationship, so it's not like a completely horrible situation for him. And I love how he calls Clarissa and he even calls her Peaches and tells her to, I have a feeling like especially Clarissa's response where she's like, Holden, that this was the first time that he ever talked to her directly. But apparently Amos wasn't around, so he was worried that someone from the Earth Navy was going to come aboard, that she needed to hide. But once they found out it was Bobby, eventually Amos just flat out like reveals, hey, we got another crew member. And I know Holden was even hesitant. He was like, well, Amos, hold up. But I think Amos was right, because there's no practical way to hide her the entire time, and plus it would mean she would have to be hidden the whole time and couldn't be useful. So Amos, like, just being Amos, just like, oh, hi, there's Clarissa, say hi. And Bobby's, of course, first reaction was, oh, you're harboring a fugitive. And Holden's like, look, this is my ship. Amos wants to do it, and I trust Amos, so that's it. And she's like, all right, fine, whatever. Because in the end, she doesn't really care about that. She's there. She cares more about the mission that they're on to get the Azure Dragon, which is the ship they're responsible for, that's guiding all the rocks in, that is destroying Earth and keeping the entire UNN fleet pinned down. rendering them effectively useless. And so we get this really intense um, chase scene, which I love this scene. I think this is one among some of my favorite spaceship chase battles or whatever you want to call them that the Expanse has, because Holden just wants to blow the ship up or at least try to damage. His plan was to shoot to drive, and so that to prevent them from running, therefore they could dock with them easy. But Bobby Draper wouldn't let him do it because she was too worried. It's too risky that he might accidentally destroy the ship and that they or damage some of the information, and that they really need the ship intact. And so Holden has to fly the ship very close to the Azure Dragon so Bobby can jump on board and disable it, which is what they managed to do. And I love it. It was really great and it made a lot of sense, and it was like powerful character story the way that Naomi, when she went to jump on board the ship, she started having a panic attack and having PTSD, which makes all the sense in the world because she's flashing back to the ship that she had to jump on in the previous season where she was out of oxygen, out of air, and she had to jump without a suit to the ship, and the trauma that she suffered on that. I mean, that was a really traumatic experience for her, and it makes all the sense in the world that this would still be haunting her and that it would cause her to freeze up and have a panic attack. And I like so she goes to the operations center when she realizes what's happening, and tries to pull herself together a little bit just to help from there. And when Holden asks her, he's like, "Are you all right?" And she's like, "Yes, I'm all right." And he says, "Are you really all right? Or are you just, I don't want to talk about it right now, all right?" And she's like, "Yeah, the second one." And I love Holden's response where he's like, "Okay." It's like a really comforting, reassuring, okay, like, I understand. I'm not going to push you. I will let you talk about this when you're ready, which really shows how Holden's come a long way and how he's really a really kind and understanding man, and really so is not going to push her, is going to let her come to him on her own terms. I love that. I think that was a really nice touch. So Clarissa sees that Naomi is panicking, so she just picks up where she left off and tries to take over for her to be helpful. And she doesn't really know what she's doing as much as Naomi does, but Naomi is able to guide her once she gets her shit together, and she's able to disable the ship. However, 3 of the Belters come out and start attacking Bobby, and she sees 2 of them and is able to take them out, but a third one sneaks up from behind Bobby and is going to get her until Clarissa bites down and activates her implants and is able to kill that other Belter by just ripping his helmet off. But, of course, using the implants causes her to vomit in her suit and become inactive, which isn't the best idea. So Bobby has to take Clarissa back to the ship, but she tells Amos. I do like how, because Amos and Holden went into the ship and they breached it and they killed the remaining Belter who was there trying to delete all of the data on the ship. But when Bobby asks Amos for a report, he immediately responds with "House Peaches." That's his first concern, and that's a nice touch for Amos. But Bobby's like, "No, I'm taking her back to the ship. She's okay. She saved my ass out there." And Amos is like, "Good." and so they get the information with Naomi's help, and it turns out they have the mother lode of all of the rocks, that not only the ones being launched towards Earth, but also the ones that will be launched towards Earth. So they have everything that they need in order to stop these attacks from happening and free up the UNN fleet. So it is a big triumphant win for the good guys. And then we get the aftermath where Amos is sitting with Clarissa in the medical bay as she recovers, and she feels like she's stupid for activating her implants. Say it was more of a instinctual reaction, but it caused her to be, vomit in her suit and be disabled out there. But Amos tried to reassure her. It was like, you just saved Bobby's life. Like, take the win. And then Holden comes in and sort of chews her out for reacting on her own. She's like, there's a chain of command here. If you see a situation, you need to communicate it with the rest of us so we know exactly what's going on. So he's not necessarily degrading her for jumping out and taking Naomi's place, because that was actually the right decision. He's kind of degrading her for not communicating this with everyone first. I think he's being a little picky, personally, but it is kind of like an underhanded compliment there, and I do think it was intended on Holden's part, because he says, as a member of this crew, you need to follow the chain of command and work together with the crew. And then, and so from Amy's perspective, it looks like Holden just like chewed her out. But as soon as he leaves, she starts smiling and laughing. He's like, you understand that he just chewed you out, right? And she was like, well, he just called me a member of the crew. And that's the first time he ever said that. That was also a really nice touch. That also puts you in Clarissa's mindset, how she just wants to be a member of the crew, how she just wants to help out. And this is actually the first step, even though Holden did chew her out, this is the first step of Holden accepting that and appreciating her as being a member of the crew. So that was a beautiful scene. I did really love that. So now they have all the information they need to go after all the rocks to free up the UNN ships. So we see Marco and Rosenfeld's reaction to this. And this is really similar to the Clarissa scene we just got. Because Rosenfeld's all like pissed off and somber. He's like, oh my god, this is such a huge defeat. They're going to come after us. And Marco just starts laughing and smiling. He's like, oh, don't be so glum. You said one day that the fight will come to us, and now that day is here. And he's like, let them come. Being all like they then anyway. He's like, let them come, we'll be ready. So, again, and I talked about this in the previous episode, how Marco was really grumpy and didn't really give a shit about being an actual politician or administrator. He has no interest in that. He's a fighter. And so that's why he's all grumpy, because he doesn't want to worry about feeding people or economies or any actual monotony that comes along with ruling. He just wants to fuck shit up. And so hearing that the UNN is going to be coming after him excites him, because now he gets to do what he wants to do. He gets to fight and fuck things up. Even though there's a superior force that greatly outnumbers him is coming for him, he loves that, because that's his thing, and that's his jam. And plus his ego is so inflated now because he thinks he's so awesome because he got this far. But I think, as Walker and other people pointed out in this episode, Marco was just lucky. He was basically, he basically just used the fact that Mars was falling apart, and there was a splinter group who wanted to colonize this other world, and just wanted the proto-molecule technology, which Marco could get access to. And so Marco was lucky. He was basically built up he was lucky for the fact that the Duarte and this Laconian fleet existed, and just used that to his advantage. How far is he going to get without them? Because now they're gone. The Laconians no longer give a shit. They have their world. They just let Sol System burn. In fact, that's part of their plan, actually, to make sure that they're not chased after, is to leave the Sol System in chaos. So now it's up to Marco to deal with the UNN fleet in all its glory. How good will he do? Well, I guess we'll see. But again, it makes it really exciting, and as a really, really great build-up for the rest of the season to come. So my rating for it, Azure Dragon, out of 10 is going to be a 9. Excellent. Not quite a 10, but I love this episode. This is great build up. It accomplishes what it accomplishes great. We get great character moments with Philip experiencing his guilt. We get great character moments with Drummer and Walker. Like the chemistry between them is beautiful. I love those scenes so much. And great character moments, of course, with Clarissa becoming a member of the crew and Bobby, of course. Always great to see Bobby team up with Holden. It doesn't happen enough. And seeing their interactions was amazing. And it was one of the best sort of chase fight scenes that we got. I loved it. So anyway, that is it for my review of the Expanse Season 6, Episode 2. I shall be back next week and every week thereafter to cover the Expanse. Also, we'll be doing a live discussion every week this Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be joined by Darren, as always, and also this week, my sister Alyssa will also be joining. So the three of us will dissect this episode in greater detail, so be sure to join us for that. The link for that will be in the description below. Also, be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on other shows like all things Star Trek Discovery, Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks so much for watching.